Welcome to the Oswego Alumni Podcast. I'm your host, Dee Perkins. Today's guest is one of the most accomplished and most loyal alumni in SUNY Oswego history. We are so excited to talk to him. Lou Borrelli is the class of 1977. He has spent more than 4 decades at the forefront of cable, content, and connectivity. He helped build Marcus Cable, led broadband strategy at AOL, served as CEO of NEP Broadcasting, supporting events like the Super Bowl, the Oscars, the Grammys, and Monday Night Football. And today he serves as the CEO of National Content Technology Cooperative, representing more than 700 broadband and cable operators nationwide. This April, Lou will be inducted into the Cable Hall of Fame's class of 2026, recognizing his impact on the industry for over 40 years. Here at Oswego, he is equally well known for his generosity and his mentorship. He founded the Doc O'Donnell Media Summit, which has brought nationally known media leaders back to campus. He served on the Oswego College Foundation Board and the CMA Advisory Board, and has been honored with both the SUNY Oswego Presidential Medal and an honorary Doctor of Humane Letters. And today he's here with some very special news, a new matching fund that will name the Hewitt Union Dean Suite in honor of our beloved former dean and Professor Fritz Messere. Lou, welcome to the Oswego Alumni Podcast.
Dee, I don't know why it took this long, but I am thrilled to be here.
Oh my God, that is fantastic. I am so glad too. I love talking to other broadcast professionals because what I like to say is they bring the sparkle, and you definitely bring the sparkle.
Yep, thank you.
Last time I saw you, you were wearing a green sequined jacket and
Yes.
you were making the big announcement about the Fritz Messere Fund. So tell us about it.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, I started my philanthropy supporting Oswego by founding the Media Summit. It was back during our first campaign, and the opportunities that they presented me were, well, we could put your name on the snack bar in the campus center. We could put your name on the visiting girls hockey locker room. And I was like, no, I don't want my name anywhere. What I want to do is create something using my experience and my contacts to bring professionals to campus and to give students that front row seat, that personal interaction with some of these great media luminaries. And so we agreed. I worked on this with Mary Canali, who we all know and love, and we came up with this idea for a media summit. And true to form, they decided they needed to name it after me in the beginning, which I was not happy about. But it was to demonstrate as we were building this campaign that people from all walks of life and different majors and different experiences could have an impact on giving in Oswego. So I reluctantly went along, and we got the first couple off the ground. They were terrific. And then I talked to my old buddy Al Roker, who generously matched my gift, and we renamed the summit after at the third summit. We renamed it for Doc O'Donnell, and Al's employer NBC was kind enough to do a matching gift for him that was the money that went into the Al Roker Studio WTOP. So that took off pretty well. We're in our 21st year. We just had our 21st summit. And thankfully, between my gift, Al's gift, and others who joined us, that endowment is now over $500,000, and it will fund the summit for as long as there's water in the lake. Because the beauty of the summit is it's created, produced, and executed by students. There's one faculty member that's sort of the adult in the room, but it's all done by students. And so the good part is we're at a point in our lives now, I'd say probably for the last 10 years, virtually everybody on stage is an alum. In the beginning, it was outsiders and such and accomplished people. Well, the good news is we have accomplished alums. So we haven't lost any of the quality, but it's more impactful for the students to hear from people that actually sat in the seats they sat in, that worked at the radio station they work at, that took the classes that they're taking now. And I think that that's been the nice journey that's happened with the summit. And as you mentioned, we had our founding dean of the School of Communication, Media, and the Arts, Fritz Messere, is someone who I met back, gosh, 76, 77. When I first got to Oswego, I think Fritz was running a program over in London. And so he was around, but he wasn't around. And then I got to know him quite well when he returned. And so the whole concept of the School of Communication, Media, and the Arts, which is now the College of Communication, Media, and the Arts, was Fritz's brainchild. And when we celebrated the opening of Hewitt Hall, which is the new home, people didn't quite understand or get the joke. This was a 20-year conversation. I mean, he had it in his mind that when all the other construction projects were happening on campus, that we needed a proper home. And Hewitt, now that the campus center kind of replaced Hewitt as the center, that was going to be our building, quote unquote. And so I was on the foundation board when that first came up, and I was on the school communication meeting, the arts advisory board. And over the years, it was a very methodical march, right? And Tyler Hall's renovation came first, and now we've got Hewitt. And at some point, I think they're going to do Mahar, and I know Lanigan's on the list somewhere. But for the most part, everything happens in Hewitt now. And so as these projects go, and as somebody who has both given money and also asked people for money, I knew what was coming. And so I had a sit down with Jen Knapp, who's our current dean. And, they give you the brochure and they say, well, there's this thing and there's that thing. And I looked at this dean suite and I looked her dead in the eye and I said, well, there's only one person this can be named after. And she says, I know. I said, so that's what we're going to do. And so I committed, it's a matching gift of $150,000 to raise the minimum, which is 250. So there's a little bit extra in there for me that will still go to the fund. But what I'm trying to do is get anybody who's had any impact from Fritz, who's had him as a professor, has him as a mentor or a friend, to say, you know what, we've been out of school now. For me, it's almost 50 years. But there are others who have been out for 10, 20, 30, and they're all making their way. And here's what I would rhetorically or not so rhetorically tell people. Given your current position, where you are in your life, did your Oswego education and experience provide you with an extra couple $1,000s a year earnings, or your place in life, right? So not everybody can cut a check for 150 grand. I know that. But over 5 years, could people cut 1,000 a year or 500 a year or 2,500 a year? And so what we're trying to do is I'm not just trying to go after the old folks like me that have a little bit more money in the bank. I'm trying to get everyone who's been impacted by this program, by this college, by the efforts that we've all made together to chip in memory of Fitz. And it's not in memory of, he's still alive, but you understand what I'm saying. I just
Oh
made a
yeah,
mistake.
I was about to
Right?
get in
Yeah,
there real
yeah.
quick.
He's still with us. So that's the gig. And frankly, we started out at the opening of Hewitt Hall. That's where we announced it. Yes, I was wearing a sparkly green jacket, which I had bought on Amazon for a conference that I hosted in Vegas a couple of years before. And I really haven't worn it. And so my idea was I'd wear it to the dinner. And then once the dinner was over, I ran over to the hockey rink and I gave it to the kids at TOP. So I've gifted it so that they can wear it. And one of the kids put it on that night. I don't know if they'll ever wear it again, but I got it out of my house. But that's my honest and earnest request is that anyone who has gone through our college, now the College Communication Media and the Arts, and feels like they were given all the tools necessary to be successful in wherever you've decided to land and do. I'm just asking for a piece, just a piece. And I put up half, essentially a little more than half. I'm looking for the other half. And honestly, it's something that anybody can participate in. Yes, we need some bigger gifts, but we'll take anything. And that's the goal. The goal is to honor Fritz, to provide that linkage. And literally, because he's been around for so long, there are students that have only been out 10 or 15 years that still benefited from him. And so we're just trying to broaden the collective, list of contributors, from old folk like me that went to school there in the 70s to people who graduated 5 or 10 years ago.
So I was standing with Fritz afterwards, and he seemed really emotional. Is it
Well, it
true
was a
that
surprise. It was
he
a
found
total
out that
surprise.
night? That's how
He
it happened.
found out that night when I opened my mouth, and it was so funny because, he was sitting with us. I was up on the podium and Susan was sitting next to him. And the first thing he did is he turned to Nolan and goes, "Did you know about this?" And dead, dead face. She goes, "Absolutely not." Well, obviously she did, but she played it. She played it well. And that was the
Beautiful.
reaction we were hoping for because he deserves it. When I think of the guys that were around when I started, it was Doc, it was Vince Duty, it was Dave Nellis, it was John Hurlbut, it was Vince Duty. I think I said him already. But there were those that were the core because the department, when I showed up in 73, the department was only about 5, 6 years old. I thought it had started a lot earlier. It really didn't start until I think 68 or 69. So those formative years when we literally were told you could do anything you set your mind to, and that whole Oswego attitude came out. And that's what I have been trying, and those that came after me have been trying to keep alive and instill in the new kids, which I think is actually still the case because these kids show up and they can do just about anything. And it shows in the work they do, in the internships they get, in the careers they have. We've been fortunate. We're the little department that could,
We
and
met
we
that
still do.
young man who was doing the videos that night, and
Oh,
then they brought him
crushed
on
it.
stage. He wasn't supposed, my favorite part about that
Mm.
was he wasn't supposed to speak. And he gets up and does a speech that just like knocks
Yeah,
it out of the park. I'm like,
right.
this is why
Yeah,
we love this school. It's amazing.
exactly. Exactly.
So I can see in your heart that you have so much love for Fritz. It's so obvious.
Mm.
My Fritz story is for a long time. Well, I'm 80. Well, I graduated in 85, but I get there
Mhm.
in 82. And someone said you can't be a disc jockey with that Queen's accent. I was a little different than Cyndi Lauper, just a little bit off
Mhm.
from Cindy. And I went to Fritz one day and I said, "Listen, this is what I want to do. I want to work in radio." And he said, "You can do it. You just need to work on this, work on this, and work on this."
Mm.
And that moment is stuck. Here it
Mhm.
is, 40 years from when
Mhm.
I graduated. It is still
Mhm.
stuck in my heart. I still get teary eyed talking about it. Every
Sure.
time I see him, I embarrass him because I continually bring it up 40 years
Yeah.
later. So that is my Fritz story. I'm wondering if you have
Mhm.
one.
Well, my Fritz story is my favorite Fritz story is came much later after graduation was when we were working on what the school could be. And I think that, to Fritz's credit, he had a vision. He organized those around him with that vision. And I was both fortunate and honored to be a part of those early conversations where we were dealing with the administration of the school, Deborah Stanley at the time, and we were dealing with the state and trying to figure out how do we get from a department to a school and then to a college. I was there for the part where we became a school. And that required some commitments. And I've in addition to the summit, I've continually funded I funded excellence funds for both WTOP and WNYO and the Oswegonian, Oswego Student Media. So I would provide funds that would fill the gap from where they needed money they didn't get from like SA or in their budgets. And Fritz was just the organizing principle. I mean, everything, the thing that I love most about how we went about it is he really was trying to emulate the vision that Doc had originally. And that's the connective tissue. No, it's Doc O'Donnell, it's Fritz Messere, and now it's Jen Knapp. And even though Jen wasn't part of the old guard, I mean, I remember she told me the first year that she was teaching, she was doing Com 100, and I was there for a summit. And I tell the same story to the Com 100 kids every time, and especially when it's in Lanigan 101. I was like, look, I used to sleep in that last row on the aisle for anthropology 101 in this building. It's the only D I ever got in college, but at least, I figured out how to pass it. I said, in this class, your objective, because most of you are freshmen, your objective is to figure out how many times you can fail in 4 years, because that means you're trying things. And that it's okay to fail, because then you figure out, okay, what did I learn from this? Let's go forward. And I also said, unless you're going to be a lawyer, a doctor, or an accountant, nobody cares what your grades are. So don't focus on the grades, focus on the experience. And Jen's looking at me like, who is this guy? Right? I mean, we've had a joke about that now for, I mean, what she's been in Oswego 17, 18 years. But it's like, it wasn't exactly what she was expecting from some, illustrious alum who, I was like, you got to tell them straight. You got to tell them straight, because that's what they told me. I believed them, and it worked. It turned out.
You just made me feel better about failing two classes.
Yeah.
Math 102. Math 102, remember?
Ugh, hated Mac 102.
Not good.
Hmm.
All right. So I always ask people I interview, you're a kid from downstate, what drew you to Oswego?
Well, so I started in radio when I was in high school. I grew up in New Rochelle. I worked for a wonderful guy named Bill O'Shaughnessy, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. But Bill ran WVOX in New Rochelle, and it was the pillar of what you'd call community radio. And so I knew I wanted to be in radio, I thought. Um, and so back then, another funny story you tell kids, back then we had to actually apply using paper and an envelope and stamps. And so I applied to four schools. I applied to American University in DC, Ithaca College, Syracuse University, Oswego State. And at the time, and through my college career, I was a competitive swimmer. And I was okay. I wasn't great, but I was good enough that people wanted me to come swim there, although nobody was offering scholarship or anything. And so at the end of the day, with the four visits I gave, or I had, it was clear to me that the way Oswego was set up is that I would be able to be active from day one. And the thing that stuck with me most when I went on the Syracuse tour, they had beautiful facilities. They had all the money in the world. And ironically, later on, I've gotten to know the new houses professionally, and I understand like where all their commitment came from. But they always said, well, when you're a grad student, you get to do this, or when you're a senior, and I'm like, yeah, I don't even know if I'm going to grad school. And so, Oswego gave me two things. One, I could get involved right away. And two, I could literally afford to pay for school just by having my summer job. I mean, back in the 70s, people like roll their eyes. Room, board, tuition, books, $2,500 a year. I was running a beach and tennis club on Long Island Sound, probably took home four, because I was a swim coach, I was giving lessons, I was a vegetable chef, and I parked cars. I mean, I was like, the Flamingo Kid, if you ever saw that movie. That was the kind of place it was. And all I was doing was working, 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 because I was paying for school. And so that was a motivator. But for me to be able to go on campus, sign up at WOCR, which is what it was called at the time, and
I'm with you.
get assigned an upperclassman to be your trainer, mentor, evaluator. And I get a guy named Roker. That's how I met Al. Al was the guy who I had to get past in order to get on the air. And back in the day, it was a single sheet. It was like a worksheet. And you had to cut a spot, you had to do a newscast, you had to do certain things, and you did them on a cart, and then you'd put it in the cubby hole, and then Al would listen to it, and then he'd give you feedback. And Al was direct, as you might imagine. And so the one the one phrase that I always used to get, and it didn't take me long because I did have experience, but after a couple of weeks of this, he says, Borrelli, you suck less than you sucked last week. Keep going. You're on the right track. I mean, it was stuff like that. And then, I guess I was on WOCR by the end of September. And, I ran the station my senior year. Yeah, just my senior year. I worked there for 4 years. I worked at WRVO. In fact, Al and I actually worked together. We'd signed the station on. There was one semester we signed the station on like 2 mornings a week. It wasn't for the whole semester. I don't know how we ended up with it, but he and I would go in, open the place up, turn everything on. And back then there'd be a big reel to reel with all of the NPR stories that were recorded overnight. And we had to put those on a cart. And then the the teletype machine gave you the copy, the in and the outs. And so Al would stack carts. He would run the reel to reel, and he would do the carts like on the fly. Like he didn't start and stop. He just kept going. And I was doing the rip and read. I took the paper. I said, "Here's the intro. Here's the outro." Put it on, tape, and then write down what the cart number was because that's how we did the morning edition or whatever, all things considered, I think. But there were the local inserts that we did, and we did that together for a while. He ended up getting the weekend job in Syracuse from weather, and then ended up getting full time, and so he hung out. I mean, he graduated a year ahead of me, but I think stayed an extra year and he might have gotten a minor or a concentrate in meteorology. I know that he took some meteorology courses. Yeah.
So telling me all of that, it reminds me to ask you, here it is, almost 50 years later. Do you
Mhm.
still have the DJ dream?
Well,
Ah, he knows
you
what
know,
it is. Yes.
yeah, I mean, look, it is interesting. The people that I grew up listening to and loving are now all on Sirius. you know, Meg Griffin, Dennis Elsis, Pete Fornatale, who left us.
Got
You
Muni.
look at all the guys, right? And so yeah, I mean, it was fun. I did it for 2 years in high school, 4 years in college, and occasionally, and in the summers when I was doing the swim thing, I still worked for the radio station, part-time.
I should
So
have phrased it
yeah,
correctly. It's the DJ nightmare. And if you don't know what it is, I still have it. And like I said, 40 years later, where you're in the radio station and something is running out and you don't have a
Mhm.
cart or a record to play.
Right.
Does that ever happen?
No, because back then everything it was vinyl. And so yes, we had carts, but the carts were for spots and stuff. The music was all, on the wall. So and back then WOCR was in the basement across from the tavern. So, I think my first shift was like, you know, midnight to 4 or something. And so the tavern was still open. And so you put on a live album, you run across the hall, do a couple of beers, see who's there, go back, flip the album. I mean, it was really free form kind of progressive radio at the time. But look, it's a lot different now. I mean, they actually have an FM station that goes out, to central New York. We used to crank up the power in the new campus high rises because then we could drive our car all the way to like Bev's or down on the lake there, and you could hear it in the car because we were carrier current AM. The only place you should be able to hear it is inside the dorm, but they were built so flimsily that they ended up being antennas. And that was always the fun. It's like go to Onondaga, turn it up, get in the car, and see how far we could go and still listen to the station.
Oh,
Kind of
that's
fun.
neat. When I was there, we were still carrier current then as
Hmm.
well. And no, you only could hear it in the dorms. They must have changed
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
Last question about WOCR. You
sure.
had a free format. Do you have
Hmm.
any songs that you remember? Oh, I used to play this on the air.
So I used to open up. with the live version of Sweet Jane by Lou Reed because of that opening guitar solo. It's the best live guitar solo probably in the history of guitar solos. And and I closed my show with off the same album with rock and roll. So Lou Reed was my bookends. And then, look, I was on the radio with playing Springsteen when it was, Greetings from Asbury Park and The Wild Innocent. And I remember my junior year when Born to Run came out that summer, I could not wait to get back to school to play that record on the radio. And we had Bruce on campus. He played in Laker Hall. I donated photos I took because I was a photographer too. I was photographer of the yearbook and the newspaper. And some of those photos are in whatever the archive is that Penfield is building. They're like they put out a request for old stuff because they're doing a digital vault, so to speak. So yeah, I mean, it was fun, and we would get great concerts coming in. They would book the big bands from Syracuse to go to Rochester to Buffalo, and we would get them in between. So we were always like picking up great bands. It was a lot of fun.
So then you graduate and you go on to the cable industry. And at the
Yep.
time, there's no MTV, there's no CNN, there's no
Nope.
ESPN. When you look back, does it kind of blow your mind how things have changed?
Well, the interesting thing about the cable business is it was literally built as a community antenna. CATV stands for Community Antenna Television. And so in the beginning, it was all about bringing in broadcast signals into rural areas where you couldn't pick them up with rabbit ears or even an antenna on your roof. The job that I had when I got hired was to create local programming because even, in growing up, I mean, you could watch, NBC in New York. I mean, back then they barely left Manhattan, let alone go to Brooklyn or Queens. So we built a local station that had not just the programming we created, but access channels, so others, schools and public access. And and so I was there doing that for 3 years. I hired two of my friends from Oswego, Don Roberts and John Smealy. They were my first employees, and we built this little production unit. Got a bunch of students as interns, recreated what we had created in Oswego. And we did all kinds of things, college basketball, high school plays, middle school musicals, whatever. And and I thought that was great. I mean, I loved it. I was back in my hometown. I knew a lot of the folks that we were dealing with. And then one day my boss came to me and says, "Listen, Lou, you're having a lot of fun here. You run a department that only spends money. That is not a career path. You should learn the business side that actually makes money." And so I went from being, the manager of programming at the local station, local system to the assistant to the operations VP for the East. And that's how I learned the cable business, literally with a number two pencil, green bar paper, and an adding machine because, oh, guess what? The IBM PC had not been invented yet. So we're doing everything manually. And the value of the business was always in the capabilities of the network. And so when, satellite became, the transmission of choice, it was taking, signals from space and then putting them on a network that was built originally for, say, 35 channels. And then you could upgrade it to 54 channels. And it seemed like the technology was scalable. And so it wasn't surprising to me that as we continued to invest in the plant and the channels gained bigger distribution, the focus was really on the content and on the programming and pay TV and HBO and Showtime and all that. When it came to doing the internet on cable, I was, it was an interesting transition because you're basically taking, for example, at the time we had a very large system in Fort Worth, Texas, and all of Tarrant County. It's 5,000 miles of cable and fiber. Now you're turning that into effectively what looks like a wide area network in an office. You can log in, it's always on, all that stuff. I remember the first installation we did in our CTO's house just to dry run it. took us a week to get the damn thing to work because it was brand new and nobody knew anything, right? And today, it's all plug and play and it's, great. And now we've got phone service and now we've got all kinds of things. It's really a testament to the vision of the engineers and the technologists that understood what the capability of the network was. The first big product was programming content, but the real, the product that has legs is connectivity. Because without connectivity, you don't have anything.
That
So,
leads me to my next question. You had a huge
hmm
career in cable, but
hmm
you went to AOL after doing so
hmm
much in the cable industry.
yeah,
And you argued to them that they should become the HBO of the internet. And
right. They
and
didn't listen.
they didn't listen. Lou, they
Eh,
hired you. They
well,
hired you.
I
And
know, I know. Listen, there are, and by the way, the guys who hired me are my friends, and they're still my friends. But they had a vision because they were so wildly successful. They thought they could impose their will on anybody and anything. You know, when I joined AOL, we had 34 million people paying 19.95 a month for dial-up access. Literally, it was America Online. I mean, the name really captured who we were. And transforming that to a broadband service where the connectivity was coming from the cable company and I thought they should just ride on top of it. They wanted to control the whole experience. And the cable industry was not going to let them just have a wholesale deal on the content or on the network and then make believe it was their network. That was just not the way the cable industry was built. Now, the phone industry didn't know anything. I mean, the reason AOL had all those customers, they literally put multiple modems in every pop in the cable in the telephone network so that all the calls were local. I don't know if you remember, sometimes when you're on a different service, they charge you long distance. Well, AOL was smart enough to do it. And they thought they could take that same mentality and force it on the cable operators, and they couldn't do it. So for 4 years, I did my best to try and make it. I mean, we did a lot of great things. We were producing live concerts at Webster Hall every Tuesday night to create content. So I had Michelle Branch, we had Usher, we had, um, oh, who are those guys? Smashing Pumpkins, Bare Naked Ladies. I mean, anybody who was big in, the late 90s, early 2000s, we had them because in the record business, or I said Tuesday night, it's actually Monday night because records drop on Tuesdays. So anybody who had a CD or an album coming out, we would have them on Monday night. And that was content that we put on AOL. So we started an AOL music channel and other things. Um, but, look, AOL Time Warner's merger has been written about. It was a bit of a shit show. Everybody knows it. Guys who did it did their best. And, for me, it was time to move on. So I went to NEP, which, as you said, was at the time the world's largest production services company. And we did everything. Um, if you were watching a live national sporting event when I was there in the US, we had an 85% market share of those games. My joke was we were like the Hard Rock. We loved all and we served all. We didn't care who the network was that was getting these packages. We had the trucks and the people that could do the best possible job. And so even when the rights changed, the games sort of stayed with us. Um, in entertainment, we had 100% market share. Oscars, Emmys, Grammys, Golden Globes, People's Choice, Kids' Choice, CMAs, VMAs. I mean, you name it, we did it.
was your
And
role at that company setting up the agreements between the people who wanted to use the service and your company, or was it
yeah, I
you
mean, I
going?
was I was the CEO, and we had a very long established track record. My job at that time, so we were going from standard definition to high definition. And the HD trucks and the cameras, the equipment was bloody expensive. I mean, by a factor of 4 or 5 over what they were spending before. And so what I think we did successfully was when, say, all right, so ESPN gets Monday Night Football. We were part of their bid team because they needed to understand, in order for them to create the show they wanted, they give us a list. Here's all the things we want this show to be able to do. And we go back and figure out how many trailers can we fit all this crap in? How's it going to be configured? You put it all together, and then we have to run it, we have to maintain it. So we come up with a number. And that's how you back into, what are you going to pay me per game? Or what are you going to pay me per year? In the old days, the contracts were short. And what was happening, as cable expanded and as the leagues and the teams saw, oh my gosh, we're gonna get all these rights, and it was competitive. We said, look, if you did a 7-year deal for the NFL, we need a 7-year contract, because I'd be damned if I'm going to build these trucks, run them for 4 years, and then somebody else walks in and undercuts me. That can't happen. So we did something a little innovative. We created a 7-year proposal that at year, like say 4, we'd set aside a fund. Now these trucks cost a lot of money, and the deals were worth a lot, but we would set aside like $1 million and said, if we have to upgrade cameras or add some new technology. What they didn't want to be is, by the end of their term, they didn't want to be in a 7-year-old truck that hadn't been upgraded. So we built that into the contract. And we did that with all of them because, you know, by then they were spending tons of money on rights, and the agreements were getting, very complicated. I mean, we did the Olympics for NBC, and still do. Um, and it was like, okay, we need to have X amount of inventory to be able to do all these events around the world. I was there for 4 years. When I left, the the guy, the equity firm who bought it, the lead on that was my old partner who I worked with to create Marcus Cable, a guy named Jeff Marcus. And he said to me, he goes, well, okay, you're gone. We own this now. What would you do if you were here? I said, I would leave. I would look at every country that we're not in, because when I left, we had the biggest events with the biggest clients that wrote the biggest checks. That's the way NEP was structured. There's nowhere to go but down, right? You're already there. So they set out to go to different countries. And I said, look, don't buy number one, buy number three, because your reputation and your assets and your people will make it number one almost the day you close. And today, I think they're in like 36 countries. I mean, it's a massive business. It's nothing like I had. The two guys that have been CEO past me are like, I was the state school kid that didn't go to grad school, and then we got like Harvard guys and guys who ran public companies coming after me. I was like, well, that's the way it goes. You do what you can, and then you hand it off to the next guy, and they've done great. And I still have people that I hired that are still there that, I have to admit, when Sunday Night Football comes into Kansas City and I'm there for the weekend, I'm in the compound, because I still get my credential, and I still walk around and see friends. It's a lot of fun.
But when you have that credential, it's not like you're getting on the field, right? You're hanging out in the
No,
truck.
no, no. I have to hang in the truck. Now I can be on the field before the game, halftime, and after the game. But as I used to tell people, I got all, in fact, you can't see them. They're hanging on my door. I've got hundreds of credentials. I never got a seat. Like, I didn't have a ticket. So I always sat in the truck. And in fact, when we did Super Bowl, I wouldn't even stay for the game. I would come in early and, take my guys out to dinner, take the client out to dinner, stick around for Thursday night because that's halftime rehearsal. So get to be on stage with Springsteen and the Stones and Prince and Aerosmith. Those were my 4 halftime shows for the 4 years I was there. And, you know, and then I'm the guy on Friday that's leaving when everybody at the airport is coming to the game. I did that. I did that every year.
Any of those four you want to say is your favorite? It has to be Springsteen, right?
Well, Springsteen was great, but I will tell you, the best performance was Prince,
Of course.
because as you've seen, if you've seen any of the outtakes and stuff, it was like they called him up, say, "Oh, it's raining really hard." He goes, "What do you think?" And he goes, "Can you make it rain harder?" That was Prince's, and that show was spectacular. Spectacular.
I don't know about you,
Purple
but I was
Rain in the
scared for
rain.
him. I was scared.
So were the producers and everybody on stage. And the twins, he had those twins that were the dancers. They were on like 9-inch platforms on that slippery stage. Nobody got hurt. Nobody fell. It was a great show.
All right, so let's get in the time machine. You did
Hmm.
all of this amazing work. I want to go
Hmm.
into what I saw yesterday at my brother-in-law's house. Could you have
Hmm.
ever imagined a product like NFL Red Zone? Do you ever watch it?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's the perfect companion for football fans because you can, in effect, keep track of all the other games you're not watching, or if you're doing things and you just want to have something on, rather than have one game on, you have all the games on, and when it's all being, it's in the red zone scoring. So yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of innovation that's happened when um, when we moved from analog to digital, both in production, meaning HD and 4K and all that, and also in transmission. Now all of a sudden, you have unlimited possibilities. I would tell people, any idiot with a smartphone and internet connection is a media mogul. And it's true. Look at TikTok, look at Instagram, look at anything. There's it is the democratization of distribution. It's a mouthful, but anybody can distribute anywhere. The question is, are you distributing anything that's any good? Are people going to watch it? And have you figured out how to monetize it? And from what I understand, there's like a ton of creators that are making bank for no other reason than it's there. And they hit a wave and God bless them. God
And
bless
to
them.
and to one up you even more on that is now there's AI creating the actual,
Yeah.
now AI is actually creating what is AI slop. And I know you've heard about that. The
Yeah.
democratization of production.
I, you know, AI is a great tool. And I think most people that freak out about it are probably not invested in learning more about it because it's not that you're going to lose your job to AI, but you could be limited in your job growth by other people sitting next to you that have a full understanding and have great capabilities with AI. AI will help you go further. If you think it's your enemy and it's not your friend, you have a greater chance of being left behind. And I tell that to students. I tell it to my own staff. I mean, we're integrating AI at the NCTC, and everybody's like, "Oh, we're gonna lose our jobs." And I says, "No, you're gonna do your jobs better, and then you'll be able to do more, which will make you more valuable." It's the way I
So
look at it.
heading into your personal life, you
Hmm.
battled cancer a few years ago. You were on Facebook
Hmm.
about it. You were very
Yep.
upfront.
Hmm.
Did that health scare change the way you live your life?
Yeah. I mean, and I've been very fortunate. Let me first say there are a lot of people that have the diagnosis I had that didn't do well. I am very fortunate. My body reacted well to the treatments. I had no side effects. I had no symptoms. We caught it by accident. So for those that don't know, I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was discovered in 2014. I had I had some surgery because it was kind of interesting. I had a tumor on my right kidney that they didn't know what it was. In fact, they thought it was kidney cancer. And if it was, you and I would not be talking today. Okay. I mean, that's the difference between luck and luck. So they took the tumor out because they needed to. It turned out to be benign, but they saw some issues with my lymph nodes, and that's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I went through 6 months of chemo. At the time, I was living on Nantucket Island. My cancer team is in Boston. And so I'm taking a ferry, driving to Boston. I was in the big old lazy boy for 5 hours doing chemo on a Thursday afternoon and then another 2 hours Friday morning. And then I'd go home. I did that for 6 months. Halfway through, they did a scan and they said, your cancer is almost gone already. So I finished the treatment and I was done. And they told me back then, It will come back. You're in remission. You're not cured. We don't use the word cure. It'll be 7 to 10 years based upon your experience and based upon the amount of years we've been using this cocktail of drugs. It came back 7 years to the month, same diagnosis, but it was during COVID. And so I started a treatment that was very different. In the old days, it was 2 days, a total of 7 hours of infusion. The second time, it was a subdermal infusion that took 60 seconds. 60 seconds. I would drag my butt to Boston for an appointment that was less than 20 minutes between labs and infusion. And I was supposed to do that uh, for the first four infusions were weekly. And then I was supposed to do 6 more months, one a month for 6 months. I got through, let's see, two, four, six. I got through six treatments and then I tested positive for COVID. And because I'm on the hematology floor, and there are people there that are way sicker than I am. I mean, again, I'm the lucky one. I couldn't finish my treatments. And so I'm talking to my doctor, like, well, what are we going to do here? He goes, well, the problem is the treatment you're on, the way it affects your system, you'll probably test positive for COVID for the rest of the year, even if you don't have it. So we have to figure out a workaround. I said, well, how do we get a scan? He goes, well, I can't bring you into the hospital because, we've already, you're already in the system, everybody knows, and you can't come on my floor. Because I got a friend in orthopedics, because the original, so while the lymph nodes, the first time were in my abdomen, the last one, it was a big one right here on my shoulder. People aren't watching. I'm grabbing my left shoulder. And it had blown up. And I thought it was just a tendon that burst. And so he goes, well, I can just have him scan your shoulder, say you got a shoulder injury. We can fake it. So I went in and got the scan and that showed I was clean. Now, the only difference is this treatment I was on was very experimental. They hadn't done it a long time. So they don't know when it'll come back. It will. It could be 3 years. It's already been, well, it's been more than 3 years. Could be 5 to 10, or maybe never. But the next time it comes back, I'll start taking pills. I won't even need chemo because the advancements in cancer research are so great that you can go from 7 hours in chair and have your wiped on your ass for like 3 days to recover to this infusion, which basically is like going in, getting your teeth cleaned. And then you just take pills. Okay. My attitude was simple. You asked about how it changed my life. I realized that you can worry about a lot of things. And I was determined that I did not worry until a person who went through 7+ years of medical school and wore a white coat, if they told me to worry, I'd worry. When they told me not to worry, I don't worry. And I know some people can't do that, but I'm just kind of that way. And so for me, it was, you know, I got it. I beat it. I got it. I beat it again. Come on. Let's go one more time if we have to.
Your family, your new wife, your daughters, they
Mhm.
they kind of have to accept that, I take it.
Well, I think they, look, my kids went through I've only known Susan for 7 years and we've been married for three. My first wife, we were married for 35 years. She passed away while I was getting my treatment. So actually, she got sick the first time, but she had bad diagnosis for the better part of 15, 20 years. So they went through that with her and my treatment the first time. The second time, it wasn't as scary because it was one of those things where, okay, we've been through this once. They're telling me I've got a much better chance this time around. Again, I'm unique in that my body responds well to the treatment. And I can handle a lot. Like they were like, well, we're going to start slow. I said, no, no, no. Give me the maximum. Let's start with the maximum dose and see how I do. And that was on the first go round. And they did that. And they're like, how do you feel? I said, I'm tired, but I feel fine. They're like, okay. So I just got, I got the full treatment every time. It is, cancer is something that touches everybody. And there are those who are like me are fortunate and we managed to work our way through. The survival rates are just ridiculously better than they were when, from 2014. I mean, 11 years ago is when I got it. Nothing like it. And so, if you know where I put my money in Oswego and I put my money in the cancer funds because those dollars are impacting lives. Oswego impacts young lives that are going to hopefully live a long life. The cancer funds I donate to are going to try to extend the lives of people who unfortunately have had this disease.
Talking about things that scare me, one of the other things I see in Facebook is that you love sailing, and many
Yes.
times you post from your boat early morning, it's still dark
Mhm.
or the sun is coming
Yeah.
up. And most of the time, I think you're out there by yourself.
Correct.
Do you have any scary sailing stories?
Well, I have to say, I came to sailing later in life. I was on the water all my whole life. I never owned a boat. I was at a little beach club in my family. I was nothing fancy, but people had boats, and you know, I was sailing other people's boats or on other people's boats. When I turned 50, I came home to my family. I said, "Thank you for my birthday present. You're buying me a sailboat." And they were like, "What?" Like, no, I've always wanted a sailboat, so I got one. And I got a good starter boat as a 35-foot sloop. It was not really a coastal boat, but it was a good, decent cruising boat. And I had that for a number of years. And what I realized was that it really wasn't an ocean going boat. I mean, one of the things we skipped, I did work in Jamaica for a year. I lived in Jamaica after my first wife passed away for Digicel. And so I had my boat sent down because I thought I'm in the Caribbean, I'll go sailing. What I didn't realize was that Jamaica isn't close to anything. The closest island that I could cruise to was Cuba, and it was 2 days away, and nobody's going to Cuba. So the boat got beat up on the way down, and it got beat up on the way home. And boat stands for bust out another thousand. I don't know if you've ever heard that. But I decided I needed a bigger boat that was more ocean going, which means now it's bust out another 10,000. But it's a 48-foot, what I tell my New York friends, it's a junior two-bedroom, two-bath that floats. So I've got two heads, two salons or two staterooms, and I've got it set up for as an office. It's my office in the summer. I mean, I can work on it. I've got Starlink Mini on there. I do conference calls. I do whatever I got to do. And so for most of the summer, even though I still travel to Kansas, which is where NCTC's headquartered, I work out of the boat pretty much from middle of May till middle of September. When I'm not home and I'm not in Kansas, I'm on that boat.
But no,
Unfortunately,
no,
Susan loves sailing.
no weather stories to share.
Yeah, I had a couple of issues with in the old boat. I got caught in the aftermath of a hurricane. We waited for the seas to calm down, and we didn't wait long enough. So I was going at that time. I was living in New Canaan, Connecticut, and the marina I was with is down in Stamford. So I was leaving Nantucket. I had to wait on Nantucket a week and a half for everything to calm down. And I was like, I gotta get home. I gotta get home. And so we left. And I remember about halfway home, I realized this was a bad idea. I had like 8 foot following seas. So imagine I'm standing up on my boat. I'm 6 feet almost. And I turn around and the swells are above me, pushing me. And I thought, okay, not going to do this again. Um, in the bigger boat, I've had some big rollers. I live in Old Saybrook now, and going to Nantucket, where my youngest daughter still lives with my granddaughter and her husband, um, there's something that we call the Rhode Island rollers. It's Rhode Island Sound is this massive expanse of water that opens to the Atlantic. It's where, Block Island ends and the Vineyard, right? It's a big step. And sometimes you have 4 or 5 foot, 6 foot swells, and they're always coming in, and I'm going across. So you've got this. So I have to admit, I rarely get seasick, but there was one trip where I got to the point where instead of going to where I was headed, I turned in to Newport because I knew I wasn't going to make it. But that's the important part is you always have a plan to bail out. So I rolled into Newport. I called the guys who take care of my boat in the winter. I said, "Hey, you got a mooring for me?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Can you have the guy in the launch come out and actually hook it up for me? Because I don't think I can make it to the bow." And so they hooked me up. I went down below. It was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I think I woke up at 2 o'clock the next day. I was just spent.
So,
And
so all that being said, what do you love about it?
freedom. Can go anywhere, do anything. My boat is named Libertà, which is Italian for freedom and or liberty. And for me, it's like, I can go to Boston, I can go to New York. I mean, the boat was in Florida when I bought it. The captain who did the sea trial and we double-handed it from Tampa, Florida, all the way around Florida, all the way up the coast to Beaufort, North Carolina, then took it inside Alligator River all the way to Norfolk, Norfolk to Cape May to the Statue of Liberty. We waited behind the Statue of Liberty for a couple of hours for the East River to turn, took the East River all the way through the Sound to Newport, and then I dropped him off because he had to fly back to Florida. That's where he lived, and I took it the rest of the way to Nantucket. And it's funny because people say, "How can you sail a boat that big by yourself?" And I said, "It's actually easier to sail a big boat than a small boat. Small boats tip over. Big boats really don't tip over." So, and I've got autopilot. I've got all the gizmos. It's a 48-foot center cockpit, cutter rig. You can go anywhere.
So if a boat is in front of you and you're on autopilot, the boat knows to go around. It's like AI.
Well, it's not AI. I mean, you set courses, but you have to still pay attention. The best part about autopilot is you're not there hand steering for 8 hours, right? But you set courses and you look around and here comes a tanker. They have, you know, they're the big guys on the sea. You don't want to go close to them. You want to go around them. You won't never cut in front. You always cut behind. So, you learn the rules of the road. I mean, I've been doing this now I guess I've been sailing for 20 years and you learn. You learn.
Every time I see those videos, I absolutely love it. I love it. And then I'm
Right.
reminded of how frightening it seems to be.
Mhm.
Our favorite last question is to ask if you won an Oscar, which I don't know, it may happen. If you won an Oscar, who would you want to thank at Oswego for all the success that you've had? I think I know a couple of the names here.
If I won an Oscar, I would thank Doc O'Donnell, Vince Duty, Fritz Messere. Yeah, those three. Because, Vince was the guy who really helped me get into my first job because we created a production group of students to create shows for the local cable company in Oswego. Back then, teleprompter had a 12-channel system. They were supposed to program 8 channels, and they only were programming 7. And so the city was going to throw them out, revoke their franchise. And so they came to the college and said, "We'll give you a channel. Just put anything you want on it." And so we did that. And that experience, that kind of moved me from radio to television because now I'm producing and directing sports and news and public affairs. And because I had been a photographer from high school, I sort of understood the whole visual kind of thing about shot setup and stuff. And so that was those tapes and the clippings was the 1-inch stack of stuff that my then, now first boss had when I went in for my interview. Because I'd gone in a year before and they weren't ready to hire anybody. I read the announcements. Oh, they're going to build studios. They're going to have a truck. And he's like, "Yeah, we're a year away. Come back in a year." And so I actually went back to Oswego. I don't know if you know this. I was on the faculty for a year. I was the producer director of instructional TV. Vince Duty got a promotion. And so they called me and said, "It's only a 10-month contract." They were like, "Who's crazy enough to come back to Oswego for only 10 months?" He goes, "Call Borrelli. He'll do it." And I did. And so that year that I was working, I was developing materials for professors to use in class. I taught radio production, I think TV production, TV directing, as an adjunct, or not an adjunct, I was a professional. And then all my friends that were part of the group that had not graduated, we were doing more shows. And it was that experience that got me my first job. So that's why I would thank them, because that's how they launched me, you know.
And it's that can-do Oswego attitude that I love
Yep.
hearing,
Yep.
from you, who's so successful and venerated by a lot
Yeah.
of graduates. You have that same piece that all of us have, which is
Hmm.
I'll give it a try.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, it's it's one of those things. Like if you really put yourself out there at the very beginning, and like I tell the kids in school, college is a place to fail. You don't have a mortgage, you don't have a wife, you don't have kids. You don't have any big responsibilities. Do you want to like not put yourself out and then put yourself out 10 years after school and find out you can't do it and now you're out of work? No. No. Figure it out now. And then use that as your path to where you want to get to.
Well, Luke, thank you so much for taking time with us today.
Mhm.
You can find Lou Borrelli on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and you can find the Fritz Messere Hewitt Hall Naming Fund in the link below. We'll put it right there,
Mhm.
and we'll put it in
Great.
the show notes. Lou, thank you
Nice.
so much for doing this.
Oh, Dee, this is great. Thank you. And
You know,
thank
I
you for
got
what you're doing. You're actually doing a great service of reconnecting alums with the college and also with students and the older alums, helping out the younger alums. So you should be applauded as well. You do a great
oh,
job.
I got all teary-eyed. I was at the dinner that the Fritz
Hmm.
thing naming rights was announced, and between me and Fritz and other people at my table, it was
Hmm.
even though he had the green sparkle jacket on, we were all teary-eyed. So,
Well, I'm Italian. I cry at just about anything.
all right. And if you would like to reach out to us with guest ideas, you can find us on Facebook, also on LinkedIn, or you can email us anytime at alumni@oswego.edu. We're always looking for ideas from our over 95,000 alumni. I'm Dee Perkins with the Oswego Alumni Podcast.